turn them off?
No,
No, you just kind of lean into it when you want to talk.
I don't even think you have to take that picture out. If you
yours
want to
do
lean
that.
in, get after him, go ahead.
Blink 2 times if you can hear me now.
All right.
Who brought this girl?
We'll call the facade committee meeting to order. We'll call the roll. Eric Moricky.
Here.
Jim Kleinert, here. Becky Kleinert,
Here.
Kathy Noblock,
Here.
Brian Spellich, absent. Brandy Day,
Here.
Bob Minty.
Here.
All right, well, we have a quorum. I believe the purpose is to go over the facade program, just look and see what we can do to improve it, tweak what's going on. The clerk mailed everybody a copy of some suggestions from the mayor. So I suggest we just kind of walk through it and see what we find out. Some just housekeeping things. It's 2024 for the city council's fiscal year, so we'll fix that. And then this is formerly known as the Oglesby Building Improvement Grant Program, all right? And part of that program is that you have to improve your facade, and then you can have money for inside too, all right? And as we go through it, one of the questions I had was, and maybe the guys in back can answer, how and when will funding be available for this? I mean, what level of funding has the council appropriated for this?
A long walk for a short answer. It hasn't been determined yet, essentially, is what it is. So in the past several years, even though TIF 1 has ended, we did a resolution to set aside $100,000 from TIF 1 for this program specifically, right? I don't know what the answer is, but in fact, one of the conversations that we had is that, are we gonna set a pocket of money aside for all different incentive programs? I'm hoping this is the first one that we come up with, and I hope it's gonna be the most used one, because there's already a baseline of it being successful at the city.
Okay.
So does that mean that we set $150,000 aside from the general fund from every year? It hasn't been appropriated yet. I think we want to get a good program in place, and then we're going to determine how much we're going to set aside. But in the past, for the last 4 years, I believe we've set aside $100,000 out of the TIF pool.
Okay, the reason I ask is, some of the numbers have increased, I wanted to find out, how far that money will go and how it's granted and stuff like that.
In the
So-
last 4 years, if I recall, I want to say that the most we've ever had in a single year is like 4 of them that was used, and that they maxed out at 30,000 towards 15,000, so it was 60,000, I think, was the max that we ever did. Now, like what you're saying, if we increase the volume or the amounts for the incentives and stuff like that, will that change it? Let's say, for example, the max that we can give out is 25,000 now or something like that. Does that mean only 4 of those would put together 100,000? I don't know that answer yet, but I'd rather just get a good program in place first, and then the idea is if we can get 1 or 2 of these businesses that are empty, wanting to renovate and become an operating business every single year, we've made ourselves a service.
Okay. All right. So you go to the second paragraph, they're talking about the building improvement grant as a reimbursement program, and they talk about the 50% match up to $15,000 for just a single lot type of thing, and then they go up to $25,000 for something that's more than 75 feet. Because of language later on in this document, I suggest we strike that early in the top, because we're talking about Group B numbers up to 35,000. So if we take it out of that paragraph, leaves us some flexibility in future paragraphs. So, everybody kind of agree with that, or have any suggestions about that?
No, I think that makes sense.
Okay. So I'm just going to change that to say the city will match 50% of the cost of approved expenditures, and just cross it out from there. That's all right with everybody?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. And then TIF 1 is expired. So I think the whole last paragraph should come away, because you're going to use a different revenue source, right? That makes sense? All right, cross that paragraph. Now, the next part, they talk about Group A and Group B. Does everybody understand what the difference is there? Or do we need to revise that to be more clear? Group A is currently operating businesses located in the tax increment financing district number 1. I like that, still leaving that number 1 in there because it identifies an area, all right? Or we could just get rid of it and just use the description that's underneath it, where it says along Walnut Street from Plymouth Avenue to the Dry Bridge. What are your suggestions on that?
I wonder if that should be up for discussion, if it includes enough of the area. It was that area because that's what was in TIF 1 at the time. But if we're not gonna be dependent upon TIF 1 financing, we might want to extend it. So I don't know if this would it have included Garzanelli's from 2nd Street to,
Yeah, where is the north 800 block that cuts off for Columbia? I don't know where that's.
Does anybody know?
that might be Garzanelli, so it might go that far.
Okay.
But I'm just wondering, from the Dry Bridge to Columbia Avenue, so that wouldn't include anything on the west end. It wouldn't include like Cindy's Place or anything like that. The thinking originally at that time was that most of those businesses had received TIF funds when they were built. And so, we were trying to spread that money amongst maybe smaller business owners. I don't know if you guys want to keep that way.
So, the other thing we could do to make it wide open is that the city has a zoning map, and they have areas that are zoned commercial, retail, and business districts. So, basically include all the districts other than the manufacturing and residential. That kind of
makes
opens it up
sense.
for everybody,
Yeah,
right?
that leaves it open. And Garzanelli's is at 750 North.
Good.
So that's
It is.
probably why it ended at
Yeah.
800.
Right in there,
Yeah.
Okay. So we change that to currently operating businesses located in,
What were the zones?
you got the
Retail,
map over there.
business,
You look at it, see what the different
commercial.
zone-
Okay, which one you want?
whatever the legend says, you can read
On
it.
the legend there.
Okay.
So we've got downtown commercial,
So if we say commercial, it covers everybody, right?
community retail and service district, professional services district.
Do we want to include professional service districts? I guess that would be the attorney's offices, and insurance offices, that would work, right?
Yeah.
And general commercial district.
What is that?
That is B4, which I don't see it here on Walnut. It's gray. See a gray area?
Yeah.
It's probably on the bigger one. Paper one on.
This one here? Okay.
Yeah. No, that's TIF district. I'm not sure that we have anything that falls under that,
Okay.
general
But generally,
commercial.
we're looking for any place where a business can operate. Just exclude the residential areas is the idea, right?
Right.
All right. And leave Group A as currently operating businesses, right? So that they can improve, okay? And then number 2, says the same thing, there's the business zones or zones for commercial. That works for me. The original language excluded storage and warehousing. So, I don't think we want our downtown to end up being, closed, papered over windows and storage.
No, we want to take some of these that are already doing that, hopefully
Right.
entice them to fix it up and rent it out for a business to move in.
Right.
Okay, so we all agree that language needs to stay.
Mhm.
I would like a little more definition on the housing, because realistically, if we're gonna grow the town the way we wanna grow the town, I think we might be looking at maybe some Airbnb possibilities, but I don't know that Cindy is set up for Airbnb at this point.
We're not set up for Airbnb, so to include it would generate more questions that we can't answer, I think, at this time. We can
Yeah.
get an ordinance that addresses Airbnb. Is that coming up
So
for the plan
would you be in
commission,
favor,
something?
Brandy, of us giving a grant for somebody to improve their home to be an Airbnb?
Not necessarily a home, but I would be talking like
Building.
the building, the living units above the downtown buildings. Similar like Utica's done that, above the big one, and some Airbnbs above the Skooks. I wouldn't wanna put it in writing at this point, it would just be to discuss later on. But if that's gonna create too much for a simple document today, then, I mean, it can
Yeah,
always be amended later, right?
Right, we don't have Airbnbs in our ordinances right now,
Okay.
so,
Right.
So the housing would just be residential units,
right.
okay?
And then number 4 was agreeing to all the inspections, make sure it's meeting all the codes, so. So that creates Group B, so that's the ones we've been successful at, like with Cordelinos and the root beer stand so it wasn't open at the time, but the old Vinarella building,
Mhm.
right, we did that one too. Now that one fell into the tip 1 area, but now that would be part of the Group B, so. So what they have in green there, maybe we should address that, make sure we have everybody covered in the Group B. They're businesses that are currently not open or operating. So, we're less than 90 days. Is there a way to improve that language, or is that,
I think it should refer to empty buildings. I mean, obviously, there isn't a business in it yet, and that is our goal, right?
Correct. And I don't know any businesses that are not open for 90 days, so I think you're talking mostly the empty buildings.
well, no, I think the language meant that a business that's only been in business for
Oh,
90 days.
okay.
So, say for instance, the axe throwing. If
Mhm.
they just moved in and hadn't done improvements and they'd been there 75 days and they came in and say, hey, can we get a facade grant to improve the inside and put some signage up on the
Mhm.
outside? That's the kind of thing I think
Okay.
that they're looking for. So,
Well, what makes them different than any existing business at that point? Because Group B is to entice somebody to come into a building.
right. But if you read later on, there's a dollar amount difference between Group A and Group B.
Do we have to refer to it as businesses? Can we just say vacant buildings or buildings that are a little bit more clear so people know that they're sitting on a building and they just keep throwing?
So businesses that are currently not open, say, we can say vacant buildings?
Yeah.
I think vacant buildings needs to be in there so that might pop an idea in some of their heads that, hey, we can fix our building up and rent it out to a business or open a business.
So if we say vacant buildings or businesses, operating less than 90 days, that have been operating less than 90 days,
Have been operating less than 90 days. Yeah.
Wouldn't that then, like Becky said, make that a currently operating business, even though it's still a new operating?
right, but the difference is that if you look further back in the pages, some of the dollar amounts are different.
Mhm.
Like the maximum amount for Group A is 25,000, the language, and suggested language for the Group B is 35,000.
Mhm.
So we're saying that those startup businesses need a little more help.
Certainly.
Yep.
Right, I can agree with that,
That's why they'd be included here.
okay.
That's a suggestion. I mean, if it's
No,
up to-
I think
No, that's,
our goal is to get those vacant buildings filled.
And help businesses
Yeah.
get up and keep going,
Yeah.
right?
right.
Yep, making the town attractive.
All right. So once everybody read 2 through 4 and see if they've got any suggestion for that. I didn't have any, so.
No, I think that reads well.
Okay. So before we move on to eligible improvements in these different areas, is there anything that we've missed? Is there a reason to create a group C that we need to address, or have we addressed everybody with groups A and B?
We have the two categories, right?
Right.
We're targeting the vacant or newly opened businesses, and then there's the currently operating businesses.
Right.
I don't think there's any
I
other
don't think there's anything else.
categories in
No.
town.
Okay. I think, we were given this to make it better, improve upon it, see what we can do, and I didn't want to leave it just that, if somebody had an idea. Okay, so eligible improvements grant, Group A is on page 2. When I first read through this, number 2, I had just wrote a big question mark beside it, so you guys, I'm kind of running through my stuff. Why don't we go around the table, see if you guys have anything instead of just me spouting off mine.
Yeah, no, I appreciate going through it at least once, because I'm not even really familiar with how this grant worked, where the money came from previously, where it's going to come from, so getting up to speed on the inner workings will help me narrow down what goes out to the public.
Well,
So
you
ha-
can't have 2 unless you have 1. Is that correct?
Correct.
What do you mean?
You have to make facade improvements to be eligible for improvements inside of the structure.
Right.
Right. Right. And I think the reason I may have put the question mark was the grant reimbursement for permanent improvements may not exceed 50%, so, of the facade amount. So if you spend $10,000 on facade, your grant is $5,000,
Mm-hmm.
and then you'd only get $2,500 for the inside. Is that?
How is that based? How's the inside how's it based for the inside dollar?
It's 50% of the facade amount.
Oh, that's, okay,
Yeah.
so that
So
dollar,
if you look down here, there's an example, number 1.
okay, yeah, I did see that.
So they made total improvements of $15,000 and permanent improvements of $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
And they had architectural fees of $2,000. The total grant was $13,500. Half of $15,000 is $7,500 for the facade. And then 50% of the facade improvements is $5,000.
And that was
I'm
all-
sorry,
permanent
I
improvements.
misspoke, I'm sorry. You get what I'm saying.
Right, so it's not necessarily the total is 50%, and then a portion of that is just the permanent improvements.
Right.
So it's 50% of each.
It's a stackable grant,
Right, as long as the permanent improvements don't exceed
more than 50%
of the
of facade.
facade.
Okay.
The thinking at the time when we originally did this was that the city benefited most by having the downtown area look look better, and so that the emphasis was on the facade. But we also recognize that you have to make some of those structural improvements inside, to help the business owners out.
So, based upon my experience through work, I'm all for business downtown spending some money, a lot of money on a roof. Because if you don't have a good roof, your building's just in trouble from the
Yep.
get-go.
Mm-hmm.
So allowing instead of just painting the front, let's just fix the roof. That's That's a great idea as far as I'm concerned. And then some of the plumbing issues that you have bad plumbing, again, that can cause damage to the building, so.
Sure.
So I'm all for allowing them to spend money on the inside. Are we good with may not exceed 50%, or do we say it can match it?
That's where I'm kind of questioning, because the roof repairs, the plumbing, electrical, those can add up
That can
very
get- Very
quickly.
Right, that can get costly real quick.
And facade can be kind of minimal, actually, so if we're limiting the whole thing, or at least the inside repairs, permanent repairs, to 50% of what's approved for the facade, I feel like we're kind of cutting people off at the knees for major building improvements.
I think we should match it, honestly.
And now, because I don't know how many of these grants get approved every year, I don't know how much money we're dealing with. Did you say on average there were 4, or at least in 1 year, that was the maximum?
That's the most I remember in a single year.
Okay,
Okay.
and totaling no more than 100,000,
Yeah. There have been some that have been submitted and they didn't meet all the requirements. But 1 year we had the root beer stand,
Salsas.
Cordelinos.
Cordelinos with
Right.
salsas, and, so we had some big years. And they were all great improvements. You can see downtown, if you
Oh, yeah.
drive downtown on the weekends, it's a busy place these days,
right, I
Absolutely.
like that.
so.
Okay.
So
I'm-
you wanna
I'm not
strike
against
that then?
matching. Yeah,
Well,
I'm-
maybe we just say the grant reimbursement for the permanent improvements may not exceed the amount of the facade grant. Instead of limiting to 50%, just say
right,
it
just
may not
Yeah.
exceed it.
exceed the amount, right, because then that's matching it, without having to
Yep.
change a lot of words, we just strike out, may not exceed. So,
Just get rid
permanent
of
grant
50.
improvement may not exceed, just strike out 50% of,
Just say, of, exceed,
may not exceed 50%,
get rid of 50% of and leave the
right?
amount of facade grant. Okay,
Do you agree with the last line that says no grant funds will be available for permanent improvements unless the permanent improvements are completed as part of a facade improvement project?
I think they ought to be tied together, right?
Okay.
Because if we don't tie them together,
Right, that-
people are gonna be coming in just for the other,
And
Right.
Just
outside,
permanent.
yeah, I agree.
all right? I need a minute to read number 3. So number 3 is limiting the overall project cost on the facade, right? So you've got, if a lot is only gonna be 50-foot wide, the maximum they can get is 15,000. But if it's 75, 80-foot wide, they can ask for 25,000 to improve. And the thinking there is, the longer the front, the more money you need
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
to do it, so.
An example of that would be the Venarelli building. They received the larger amount because, I mean, it's actually 2 or 3 properties altogether.
Right,
So the only thing really discussed there,
so let me bounce some numbers here really quick. So for a building with less than 75 linear feet, they could qualify for 15,000 in facade improvements and potentially 15 more thousand in permanent improvements.
No,
Or-
a total of 15,000.
Okay. So the whole thing can't be more than 15,000?
That's what it is right now, yes.
Okay.
so that was gonna be my next point. Are those numbers big enough? Do we want to suggest something bigger than that? I mean, and remember, these are suggestions, right? The guys who, actually, the council will make the decision what those are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And by us saying,
We're making a
changing-
recommendation.
We're making a recommendation, and what they do will depend upon what they think funds are available.
Sure.
You know, if we decide to make the 25,000, that essentially cuts down on the number of projects we can do.
But that also requires the building owner to make a $50,000 improvement, so, and also this was done 5 or 6 years ago,
So what's the new cost of,
so the cost of
Improvements.
building has gone up so much.
right?
So, I mean, I don't think it's wrong to add something to that.
No, I feel like they're a little low given today's, costs for improvement.
Okay. Somebody like to make a suggestion to what they'd like those to be?
Well, I would be shooting blind to just throw numbers out there, to be honest with
Yeah,
you.
that's, I mean,
Um,
if you raise it, I mean, an extra 5,000, you know, so you're looking at 20. Yeah, it's a little, it's 5 extra thousand you can throw at your building. Is it gonna be enough? You don't know. You know, with the cost of materials and everything, you know, the way they are. So it's kinda hard to put a number on it.
And it also, well,
I mean, I know
Do you
it's-
remember, do most people take the maximum?
no, but several, a few have, but not everybody has. Like Mr. Salsa didn't, and
Right.
somebody else put one in that didn't quite. So,
Cause they have to come up the other half.
they have to come
So-
up the other half.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So theoretically, if we even raised it to the 20,000
raise it
maximum,
20
it's
20,000
possible
max?
it might not even be
Yeah.
Yeah.
used fully.
Right.
I think I'm comfortable with an additional $5,000.
I would be too,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it doesn't really matter if we are, but.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like that's a safe number to start at for suggestions anyways. So that would be 20,000 for a less than 75 linear foot building.
Mhm.
Can go up 5,000 for the larger building
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
To be honest, we've probably kind of taken some of the low-hanging fruit with the previous grants, right? So some of these other buildings have been sitting vacant a long time,
Right.
could use them up.
Sure.
All right. Is there 50% in here we need to delete?
Mhm.
Okay, not now. Then the others are examples, and they can update the examples based on the new dollars, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right, you said we're taking out that equal to 50%?
No, that stays. Will award a grant, applicant a grant permanent improvements equal to 50% of the cost.
Well, right, gotcha.
So if they want $10,000, they gotta spend 20.
Right, yeah, no, we want that one in there.
And the professional fees, I mean, I'm not sure that anyone's ever really taken advantage of that part of it, but should we leave that in there?
They're pretty nominal, yeah, I think.
If there was a structural issue or something, it might require an engineer, right?
Right.
So what actually entails professional fees that you would accrue that kind of cost?
Well, an architect or,
An architect or an engineer?
So when you have to call somebody in for a professional
Right.
opinion on how to handle like a structural wall or plumbing or some major
some
type
major
thing.
thing like that. right.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, I would like them to confer with a professional in those cases.
Mhm.
If we can help with the costs, that would probably be better for the overall improvements.
Okay. Was there, just back up to number 1, was there any other type of work we wanted to allow to be covered?
Facade improvements.
And they're throwing examples,
Right.
it's not an end-all be-all, but it kind of points you in the direction kind of stuff.
Kind of seems like it covers it all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Well,
does.
they didn't mention roofs, so
Didn't mention what?
it didn't mention roofs.
Oh,
Well,
that-
that's in the permanent.
Yeah.
Well, that's in the permanent, okay. All right. If I remember right, Group B language is pretty much the same as A, except that the dollar amounts change. So the big stuff in the green was the 15 went to 25 and the 25 went to 35.
I got a question.
Yes. Oh. Pardon me? Come on up, I can't. The air conditioning's in my ear here.
All right.
It's on. It was on.
There it goes. All right. This is the part where the rubber meets the road. This is the part that I really appreciate that you guys are here for. So I just wanted to preempt that I think this is one of the more successful programs that we've had in the city. There's been a lot of positive things that we've done with it. And the way it's written right now, if the council were to just strip out the language, all the TIF 1 language that's in there, and then raise the $5,000 increments and we approve that, that really is essentially Group 1, right? If we were to continue that. To me, and it's a great program, a lot of success. My real thoughts are, this is where it is. Group B is where we have not done very well. There has been some use of it, but not really. So the goal is to find ways to extra incentivize to get some of these empty buildings to be utilized, right? So a lot of the stuff you're about to read, please don't take the numbers to heart, all right? They were just put as in examples and stuff. For example, like if you wanted to raise it up to 50,000 for this, or maybe you want to increase the percentage as well. Or let's say you move to 45,000 and the max is 2/3 instead of 50%. So that way you're improving upon it. Whatever you want to come up with. The big thing that I really need help from you guys are that and I know Becky and I had a little bit of a difference of opinion on this, and that's okay. But this is where I really need some input. My concern is because it's a vacant building, with an operating business already, they're not going to really abuse the program because they're trying to improve their business, right? My concern is if we don't write it up properly, a vacant building could find a way to abuse it. I'll give you an example. Let's say there's a vacant building down there, it's valued at $50,000. Somebody owns it, it's an asset they own. And we have a rule that our new thing says we can go up to 45,000 and we'll pay 2/3 of it. So they put in $45,000 worth of improvements, only stick 15,000 into it, right? So they basically just gained $30,000 equity in their building, right? The concern I have is we have to make sure that the language in there somehow ties it to becoming an operating business. The thing I don't believe the council wants to have is that we do this program and it just increases the value of the building and then that person goes away. Or doesn't, it has to be tied to something to make sure that the business actually comes, because that's what we're focused on. And that's where I could really need some help. So I put some numbers in there, whether or not you want to change those numbers. By the way, I thought it was great. I never even thought about changing the numbers to Group 1 because I never thought about how long ago those numbers initially came from, you know. So changing numbers is one thing, but finding a way to have some provisions in there that protect the city's interests to make sure that businesses come. That's probably the biggest thing because we're specifically talking about vacant buildings.
And there is language in the current grant program of something that they signed that wasn't included in this, that once they make those changes, they have to be actively marketing it for sale or rent. They have to, it has to be listed with a real estate agent, it has to be listed in our office, and they have to be actively marketing it.
And where's that?
That's part of the grant documents that they
Okay.
sign.
Okay.
I remember that part about it.
So I can tell you, I'm only 1/5 of the council, but I would tell you, I probably would not be in favor, because that's one of the concerns I have. Is somebody says, yeah, we're gonna actively market it and sell it or something like that, and then it just stays for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years as vacant, and that person, all they got was taxpayer money to increase their equity.
Yeah.
And that's what my fear is, that's my only fear with this program, because it's been used as such a great tool. I just wanna make sure that when we expand upon it, that it's not gonna get used. That's all I got.
So the
But then, in effect, didn't the council do that for the Venarelli building? Because he went in there not knowing what he was gonna do with it.
When did the Venarelli one happen?
I mean, he bought that building empty, and, I mean,
Yeah.
didn't he get a grant?
The first grant that he was awarded was to do the side of the building and add some windows in the west portion of it to create a doorway. I believe he came back and received a second grant after, with the new council, is that correct?
Was that the building or was it another one?
I don't remember any building that we approved that did not be used for a business. So if that might, the first one must have been before 2019.
Right, at the time that we awarded the grant, he had recently purchased it and it needed improvements to the building, but he had a plan, and obviously it worked out great.
Yeah, and maybe that's part of the suggestion, maybe putting something into there to where they only get paid a certain amount. Maybe they get the lower percentage of it, so they're incentivized to get the business operating, and then once the business is operating, they get the rest of it, or something. My goal is, as long as we have some kind of protections in there that protect the taxpayer, because like, to me, that'd be the one thing taxpayers would be mad at, if they found out we stuck $30,000 into a building, and then
It's
4 or
still
5 years
sitting.
later, it's still sitting there vacant, and they'd be like, that's a waste of taxpayer dollars. But if we can find a way to continue to improve, again, this program has been used very well in the past, it just hasn't been, I don't think there's been a way to focus on the empty buildings, and this could be one of the best incentive things with a tool that we already have known to work.
And the very first one, which was long before I was Economic Development Director, they actually had something written in their grant program where the business had to be up and running for 7 years, or they had to pay back. The problem is that 7 years, new council, new people, no one enforced it. So, you know, whatever we create has to be something that is enforceable, and probably on the front end instead of the back end.
I'm gonna go sit down now, but thank you.
So the language Becky was talking about is on near the top of page 4. The property must be actively marketed for rent or sale. The owner must provide information to the city's EDC for inclusion on a directory of available buildings, and for sale or lease, signs posted in the window with contact information. And then the owner would further agree to respond to inquiries about potential tenants and make the building available for showings. So, kind of puts it on a bit there. So, just kind of letting you know that language is in this document. So,
Do we want to talk about that first then? That component of it?
whatever you want to discuss. We can discuss the dollar amounts, percentages first, or we can discuss how we, tie it up, right? So that you gotta do something, you gotta have something done, or we get part of our money back, type of thing. Or we'll give you 1/3 of your grant funds right up front, and then when you get a business in, or a tenant, we'll give you the rest of your grant, type of thing.
And I think it has to be tied into like a 4-year period, since the council changes every 4 years.
Well, unfortunately,
If you went in on the 3rd year of a council and got it, you got,
Yeah.
one year.
Yeah.
yeah.
one-
Yeah, that's true.
What about 6 months?
That's a little short,
I think it's a little short.
yeah.
A year?
A year?
I-
I think a year.
Would you think that if they had put the effort into upgrading the building, that a year would be a
them
reasonable amount
moving
of
to
time?
try
It
to
gives them
find-
time to get the stuff fixed that needs to be done. Get somebody in there, interested or in there. If they have improvements to be made on the inside. I think a year.
And you could always put in a contingency that review in 1 year, like.
Just see if they're actively trying.
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of monitor that. I don't know who would be in charge of following up with that, but.
Probably this group.
Okay.
Or the Economic Development Coordinator.
Gotcha, yeah, just to make sure that things are being done that they say that they're going to do. I feel like they should have a time limit, and I
Yeah.
feel like a year is
I
pretty
think a year
safe.
would Yeah.
Cause it
I
can
agree.
take, I mean, for any construction project, check off 6 months right now.
Exactly,
Right. Well,
depending on
because
how
Well, would it be a year
extensive.
after the
After
project is,
improvements are
the
made.
Complete,
improvements are
yeah.
made?
Because they don't get the money until the improvements were made and there's a walkthrough inspection. So
Gotcha.
that would start the clock at the end of their improvements.
That-
Okay.
Yeah,
And so we would give them a portion of it to begin with then?
Yes.
What about if we gave them the additional money they get for being a vacant building? So the difference between the 15 and the 25, or the difference between 20 and 30, whatever we set these two amounts for?
if somebody really intends to utilize the grant the way that it's meant to be, I don't wanna keep them on the hook to get extra funding to get the project going, especially since this is all tied to being done. So I don't know how I feel about metering out the funds.
Well, my thought on
Tell
it
me
We
more
won't be
about
able
that.
to get it back if we give it away, though.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this, I'm
Right.
like, yeah,
So,
open to discussion on that.
one of the other things we could consider was, when we put in for it, right? We'd let them have 100% of their facade improvements, because facade improvements is good for the entire
Right.
downtown. The downtown looks great, things are gonna happen.
Certainly.
Correct.
And then we would meter out the permanent improvement part,
Okay.
that, you know, 20,
And do that in portions.
do that in portions, say, when the work is complete, we give you 100% of the facade, 1/3 of the permanent, with the other 2/3 coming when you get a business in there. Over some specific period
I
of time.
like that, because at least
Yeah.
the building looks good from the outside.
Right.
Right.
We
And-
get ours kinda no matter what.
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
And it ties them to actually getting a business in there, not just making it
Right.
look pretty to sit empty for years. Okay, I like that.
I like that.
Okay.
So they get 100% of the facade,
Right.
Where is that at? I don't know what section.
And-
Here.
So this, now, we're talking rewriting entire paragraphs
Gotcha,
here,
I'm
so.
just going to paper.
and 33% of the permanent improvements.
Permanent improvements at the time of completion of improvements, with the remaining 2/3 when a business opens.
Does the business have to be in there for a specific time?
I think if a business shows up and they've got inventory in the building, they've made a commitment,
Okay,
right? If it fails, they try, right?
okay.
And then how long do we give them post completion of construction to get somebody in? Is everybody okay with the year?
Yeah,
1 year.
I think a year is
Yeah.
pretty fair if you're putting any, especially if you've already done building improvements, you're
Right.
showing
Yeah.
that you're giving
And-
somebody a space that's worth investing in.
And then do we want to give the city the option or the leeway to say that the 1 year may be extended? In the city's
Right.
opinion, or the EDC's opinion, that they're making the appropriate effort, that money's gonna stay on the table for you until you get somebody, or extend it for another 90 days, or,
I like that.
Yeah, 90-day extension.
Kind of covers unforeseeable circumstances that might occur.
right?
right. And we could have another COVID year or something like that,
Yeah.
that,
Well, right.
Yeah.
And then the economic development coordinator has their finger on the pulse, right, what's really happening, you know?
Right.
That person's showing it to 3 people a month, just hadn't had anybody take a bite, well, hey, let's give them another 90 days,
Right.
type of thing.
I think that's good.
so, if they don't get a business in within a year, we need to write that language too.
Yes.
Well,
They just
they-
don't get the
they-
2/3, they forfeit.
the 2/3.
That's easy language.
That, Bob, you're awful quiet down there, you guys, you good?
I just keep thinking we don't have an idea where the money's coming from, but this is all happening here, and it's like, I
Right.
mean, is there gonna be a source of money someday? I mean,
Well,
apparently
that's up to the
that's what he
council.
that's what he just
If-
said.
And-
If they like what we've written, maybe throw another 50,000 in the pot, who knows?
Yeah, and they,
If they
and they
don't like
did
it, they can
express
cancel.
support for it at the working meeting. Right?
Say that first line again?
They did express support for it at the working meeting.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
In fact, they were very,
What the working meeting saw is what you see in front of you today.
Okay.
The rough draft version of that. That's why I was gonna make some more revisions to it, but I didn't wanna necessarily kind of give you something that the council can already see. So right now, the council is for that general concept, but it's the idea of refining the rough edges.
but about, earmarking some money for this. There's at least 100,000 for this year?
Well, that's already in place.
Okay.
So if you were basically group one, if it's in the TIF zone, we don't even have to do anything. That already exists right now. It's for the group two, and if you wanted to extend TIF, the group one to beyond TIF one, is where we would have to earmark specific money for that. We have not talked about a certain amount. There's also a couple other incentive programs that I have cooking in the back burner. My thoughts are though, if we've already put 100,000 away for this, maybe we put 150,000 that we set aside in the budget every year for all programs, all incentive programs altogether. But that's a discussion at a later point in time. This one's so important because it's already a working prototype of one that is already functional. The other ones, utility abatement, industrial ones, none of those have ever been created yet. So that's rewriting the whole effort. Does that make sense?
I think that we do this and we let them worry about where the money's coming from.
And if we get just 2 of these a year, that's 2 more than we had without it,
Absolutely.
right?
Well, and the other thing is, I can't understand somebody coming in and wanting to put a business here and running to city council, or running here and saying, I need a facade grant. They may not even know about it.
Right, well, that's the economic development coordinator's job, to go knocking on the doors, talking to the owners of these vacant buildings and saying, hey, here's a brochure and a new program we have.
I was
Right.
wondering
So
about that.
you are
That's-
gonna market it.
And market it.
All right,
Yeah. And-
Cause it hasn't been marketed.
In the
before, has it?
past, Bob, we had a vacant buildings tour.
Yep.
The Cabo Group put it together and they worked with City Hall. And it was very successful. It was amazing the number of people who showed up from all over to go through those buildings. And then some of them did end up purchasing buildings and, using the grants. So
I think that
we
should
we
be done
just, we need
again.
to, we need to do it again and we need to market it.
Well, if,
Come on, sure.
So that is a great point about what people know about and what don't know about. For example, GTI. GTI, the initial one was started with Mayor Finley, for example, and then under Mayor Rivera, we did agreements with them. Now the council can always work on an agreement with a specific person looking to come in or something like that to try to incentivize this. This idea is the fact that there's already public incentive programs out there. So we're trying to attract people that don't even have to come to try to negotiate something with the council. They already have an application format that they can put in for. That's the advantage of that. So we do need to do a better job, but I want to have more incentive programs. Right now, that's one of the concerns I have with this. The vast majority of people that have used this program are people that are either operating businesses or people that are already connected, that they know about stuff inside the city. So the idea is to have this as like a flagship program, and then a utility abatement program. There's talks about a tax incentive credit one. There's even one about the small business loan one that we're considering. I'm hoping to have so many different venues for people to be able to come in to publicly, that people are gonna be actively looking at Oglesby for more things that we can do. That is the goal. So I understand, you're right. Once we get more programs, we can make sure that is actively being pursued for people to know that it's here. But again, the council can always we don't even have to have a facade agreement, right? I mean, if somebody came to the city council and said, hey, I'd like to put a building over there, can you guys cut me a deal and we can write a resolution or something like that would give them a specific amount of money payback or something like that, or whether it's TIF money or anything. We can do that one-on-one, and we have for the very large ones, but we need something that's really gonna be public to work on the small businesses.
So something like this, you could market it by sending information to property owners. You could market it by giving it to the commercial realtors, that have people come knocking on the door all the time, looking for vacant buildings for whatever, and say, oh, hey, you need so many square feet, there's building on the list in Oglesby and Hayes, look, they're gonna pay 50% of your facade improvements up to X, you know.
It's gotta be on your website too, so if people look at the
Right.
website, it's
Mhm.
all written out there, yeah.
Right. Okay. So, I personally like the 75% that's suggested here. Kinda makes the math easy too, right? The
Mhm.
1/3 is 25%, the 2/3 is 50%. What do you think about the dollars? Is the extra 5 in each category enough for a vacant building?
So some of these vacant buildings are probably in
Pretty bad shape.
pretty rough shape,
Yeah.
right? Are we talking like they're even unheated at this point, and God only knows what they're,
The roofs and.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Right.
And if this is all just kind of a starting point for the city to put together their heads to go with, I mean, do we wanna get these buildings filled?
Or we can go big or grow home.
Well, I mean, we
That's
also
what
have
I'm
to
kinda
consider
thinking.
where's the money coming
Where's
from,
the money
whose
coming?
pocket's
Yeah.
gonna come out of, so that's,
Yeah,
where do we
that's-
toe that line?
Kathy.
Right.
What would you
And
feel
again,
like a good-
ours are just suggestions.
Right.
The council will be able to see what we have in mind. They can watch this and see what our thought process was. And you know, plug in their own numbers. After they look at their appropriations and say, hey, there's not enough money to do this level of improvements. So I don't want anybody's feelings to get hurt when the numbers get changed, but we can give them our recommendations, so whatever.
So
whatever you think.
what would you propose then? Do we add another 5 to it, or?
I mean, even if we go 10, that's a $20,000 commitment
Right.
total.
yeah.
Now, the reason that I'm leaning toward leaving these numbers where they are is because we jumped it to 75%. So
Yeah.
that gives them more dollars already, right? So we're adding 5,000 more than Group A,
Right,
and then we're also,
We're paying more of
25%
their,
is another $5,000, right?
yep.
Type of thing.
yeah. So we're paying more of their costs. They're matching less. So
Right.
that
Correct.
might be,
Yep,
yeah,
yeah, the 75% is, I keep,
it's big.
it is.
So that's
Huge.
that's already a change from how this program was
Group B
originally.
didn't exist, doesn't
Yeah.
exist.
Gotcha, okay, this is all fresh then.
All new, just kind of copied, looks like it was
Okay.
copied from Group A and edited a bit to,
Okay. So let's do some math here. Does anybody math on the fly? Cause I don't. What would 75% of the 25,000 be? Like, what would their overall benefit be compared to like Group A, where
Well,
there's only 50%?
50% is 12,500. So you add another 6,250.
God bless
that.
you. So roughly 18,
18.
19.
Yeah.
18, 19.
Chew on this for a second here.
Okay.
Isn't it what their expenditure is less to get more money, right?
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I think the council has to put the numbers in, I just think we need to keep it at 75% as it reads.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
With the language about the 1/3,
Mm-hmm,
2/3, and
Mhm.
1
Yeah.
year,
yes.
and all of that.
And I think the 25 and the 35, I mean, I'm happy without changing those to send it to the council.
Especially since they're, yeah, since it's 75%.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else we'd like to add to that Group B, or any restrictions we want to put on it? Other than what we already have?
And it has to be the owner of the building, not someone that's gonna rent the building. Is that in here?
The owner has to agree to it.
Okay.
The-
So if they have a
He
tenant.
has to be part of the part, I think I read that in here, yes.
So if the tenant's gonna want to do the improvements on their own, spend $50,000, as long as the owner says,
I'm right there
good
with
for him,
you.
I'm with you.
Then we can get, but the owner has to fill out the application, right? Or is it the business that fills the application?
The person applying for the grant, so if it was a tenant being responsible for paying for it, they would fill out the grant, but they have to have it signed by the owner that says that
Gotcha.
that they agree to it.
Gotcha.
Think you have mine down there, Eric?
Nope, not this time.
Okay.
Oh, it's right here. Okay.
So I think the minimum requirements are pretty straightforward from the previous documents. One of the problems we've had in the past is that, people have started to work before they got approved.
That last line, yep. Has to
Kathy and
be
I've been through
really
that.
stand out.
Right. So the thing is, you don't start until, if you want reimbursed, you don't start until the agreement's in place.
Absolutely.
And better marketing by the city, making
Yes.
sure that people are aware of what the rules are before we start. I mean, I think that'll be
Absolutely.
important.
That'll go a long way, yeah. And the marketing itself is gonna go a long
Now,
way.
there was one line in here that I thought might be good to change. The process, number 3 on the process. It says, file for a building permit and review by the design review board if necessary. Design must be approved by the design review board if applicable before construction bids are obtained.
Yeah, why is that there?
I don't think before construction bids are obtained, because like the root beer stand, they did everything, they don't know what their costs are until they go out and get that proposal for that lighting. So I would like to strike that part of that number 3.
Yes.
You know, that they can go get them, right? Because that person, that company's gonna give you the colors that the design review board wants to see. They're gonna give you specifics on windows and details. So that, everybody kind of agree with that
I
change?
totally agree
So
with
we're
that.
just striking the last part before construction bids are obtained?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Right, so.
What, I keep saying if applicable, if necessary, what triggers a review from the design review board
Right.
versus what not triggers,
So
what
there's a
doesn't trigger?
There's a separate design review ordinance. So the business district, downtown business, basically from the Dry Bridge to, what, 251?
Yeah,
It's a-
yeah, yes, yeah, it goes further.
Right, so any businesses along Walnut Street from the Dry Bridge to Route 251, and any business on Columbia, basically from Grazianelli South to Second or Third Street. So I don't remember the ordinance specific, but that's what it is. If you're gonna make an improvement, you have to come to the design review board, and they have to approve what you want to do. And the idea is that, so you don't end up with some metal-sided, rigid metal frame building in your downtown business district, right? If it is gonna be a rigid metal frame building, there's gotta have to be some stone under, something that makes it look appropriate for your downtown. And so you don't get some shocking colors, you know, in the middle of your block that is all kind of a rustic, you know,
Gotcha.
type of thing. So that's the purpose of design review, to kind of keep a handle on that. And that's why the if applicable. So if this thing is somewhere else, or far enough off of Walnut Street, the design review board doesn't get a say.
Because we're expanding outside of that,
Outside of that zone.
that was TIF before, right? That's the zone that it was in, was because it says earlier in
Well,
here.
the design review board is just, it's basically based on the business corridor. So,
Right, Dry Bridge to Columbia and
No, Dry Bridge to 251.
to 251.
Longer.
So that goes farther than
Farther, right,
what, okay.
right. facade committee stops at Columbia, the design review goes out further.
Mhm.
So, it's because we've expanded the zone, right, it would include those places out there.
Mhm.
So for instance,
Well, the most recent one
Blue
was the
Margarita.
Blue Margarita.
right? I can remember the name, thank you. So that's one went before the design review.
Gotcha.
It was approved. That type of stuff.
And we opened this up to go out, the grant, is that going out that far as well?
Any business zoning, any commercial zoning, any professional zoning.
Gotcha, so we're not
Anywhere in
tied,
town,
right, we're not tied to just that street and this street,
right.
okay.
So for instance, if you go south on Marquette Street, I think there's some commercial zoning, some sort of zoning down that way, so some of those would qualify for this. You don't see it a lot, but they qualify for this.
Okay. Sorry, I just needed a little clarification
No,
on
that's fine.
what their jurisdiction was.
I've been doing this stuff for years, so I know.
That's good.
So, it's always good to make me explain it. Okay,
So one of the things that has been a sticking point is in the bids. Prevailing wages will apply, a signed affidavit is required.
That definitely needs to stay.
Yeah, I concur with that,
Okay.
well, you're expending city funds,
right.
Yep.
Yeah.
right? And the city
100%.
has an ordinance that they pay prevailing wage.
So,
Yeah, you just have a voice on that,
Hmm?
prevailing wage, okay,
Yeah. Strike it.
keep it,
keep it.
keep it. Ooh, we have a
I thought it at
debate.
least needed to be
How do you-
discussed, because it has been an issue in the past with someone who made some good improvements to their building, but did not want to pay the extra to have a prevailing wage contractor, so,
I don't know anybody who gets taxpayer money that doesn't
Yeah.
have to pay,
Right.
I mean, any business using taxpayer funding.
okay?
If it was privately funded, that's completely
That's
different,
exactly.
but I do feel when we're using taxpayer funds that we've got a responsibility with,
Mhm.
How will you determine the prevailing wage?
it's set by the county.
It's set by the county, there's a list.
It's currently, it varies by trade. I can tell you what the painter's is, but
Okay. So the only thing else I had was on the last page or second to last page? Second to last page under review that sets the membership of this committee. The council, Pat Berry, or somebody needs to look at that and see if it's not superseded by other ordinances to get that correct.
sure it is.
Yeah, I think it has too, so, but that's just something needs to be cleaned up that,
which part was that?
under review,
Okay,
it says the committee consists of 7 persons, the chairman of the plan commission, and 6 persons appointed by the mayor.
okay.
So none of us are chairman of the plan commission, but when they redid their appointments, they changed some language that changes this up. So they just need to,
Mimic the same.
whatever they had in that,
Gotcha.
needs to go here.
I was looking at something in the bids here. So the lowest bid will be the amount the grant will be based on.
Right,
And the applicant may choose to use a contractor with a higher bid, but the amount awarded will be based on the lowest bid. I'm digesting that.
Because the city bids things up and they have to accept the lowest
Lowest bid.
responsible bid, they only wanna do that for this person.
But we're locking in the prevailing wage, so that kind of eliminates some,
Right.
Right. But you can also get the buddy who comes in and gives you a super high bid.
right, there's ways to
There's ways to get around
manipulate
the
that,
system.
yeah.
So doing this kind of restricts,
Gotcha, so the people aren't submitting a high bid just to get extra
Right.
funds. That makes sense too. Dang it, people, just be honest. Okay,
okay?
good discussion, thank you.
Is there anything that we've omitted that we need to cover for this?
I guess, firing from the hip, I feel pretty good with this. I guess I'd like to see it all written up and,
So, yeah, that's a good point. Do we meet again one more time, get this rewritten, meet one more time and give it to them? Or,
I hate to drag you guys to more meetings, but sometimes there's so much that flies around that by the time you compose it all and then you read through it, you're like, oh, that's maybe not quite what I meant. So if we could print it up
Yeah,
and then
let's
have
get
a
it printed up.
review to make sure that we,
Should I make the changes?
That way
I'll make the
we'll-
changes.
okay.
I have a question on the construction. Improvements must be completed within 6 months from the date of approval. Some of these contractors are way out there, you know, longer than 6 months. Is there any flexibility there?
Yeah, that is.
Oh, that's true, that wasn't a problem 6 or 7 years
Right.
ago, but
Maybe
it
with a-
definitely is the
Maybe
new.
1 year.
Some kind of review,
I mean, you say complete within 6 months, but maybe have a tagline in it that if there's a problem of getting that contractor on site,
Right,
Okay,
and
so
not
we
only,
can,
so we give the EDC some flexibility there, that the EDC can grant an extension, a one-time
yes,
extension,
something like that,
Yeah.
yeah.
subject to whatever, right?
yeah, their approval
Right,
process.
so, and they can set that, you know, that may be a letter from the major contractor saying, hey, I'm not gonna be able to get to it in 6 months, but I'll get it in 7.5.
I was gonna say, I think there has to be some kind of letter from the contractor, just, yeah.
Yes, sir.
When does the clock start? I thought the clock started after the work was completed anyway, though, right? Is that not, did I miss
Well,
that?
it starts after the clock, after work is completed for the payment.
For the payment, okay.
But
But
the
the-
language in here says have to starts within so much after the agreement, 6 months of the agreement.
Good catch.
But that hasn't been a problem in the past
No.
because everybody's
Yeah,
typically
Let's keep
starting
going.
even before they get the approval, so.
Yeah,
well, not these days.
no, it takes forever to get a contractor.
But if they've got bids, they're one step closer, right?
Yes.
yeah,
And the contractor can put it in their schedule tentatively, right? So Brandy does.
Yes, exactly what I do.
If they didn't get the
This
job
is your
now.
tentative date, I'll update you as we get closer.
Okay, so you don't need this for the next council meeting, right? She
You
can,
don't need it, but I would love to have something to talk about, what you guys discussed, because tomorrow is our working meeting, so it's a great thing to talk about if there's things that you come up with or something like that, so I can get a better idea from the council of what we want to approve.
okay,
The more polished product that is there, we can start talking about how much money do we want to set aside? You know, are we ready for that conversation yet? Because there is no other public incentive programs other than this one on the top.
right. So then you meet regular council meeting on the 5th, right?
Oh, boy.
Thursday.
yeah.
You have to meet 2 days from now to approve it before the council meeting. But they could discuss our rough draft at tomorrow night's meeting, right?
Sorry, Becky, I didn't realize it was gonna be that fast.
That's okay. That's okay. It's not, the changes aren't that drastic.
Right.
You guys are volunteers. But if I'm trying, if we abuse you too much, then you don't come back to give more input, you know what I mean?
So would anybody object if we came back? So if you could email that to us tomorrow?
Yep.
And we came back at 6 o'clock Thursday night, probably 15, 20 minutes after looking at it. Or
Yeah.
maybe even 5 if we read through it, we'd be done, right?
Right, that's just a quickie to make sure that nothing between all the discussions slips by in the paperwork.
So what we would need to do is not adjourn tonight. We would need to, what's the term for it?
Good question. I know what you're talking about.
We're gonna
Motion to
continue.
continue the meeting till 6
Continuation.
PM on
Yeah. Because we don't have time to put
June
another
29th.
agenda on, but we can continue the meeting to another date.
So
Okay.
I'd like to entertain a motion to continue this meeting to 6 PM on June 29th.
Got a cheat sheet
I'll
on all
second.
that stuff.
Second by Brandy. Oh, no, you made the motion, I was looking for a
Oh,
motion.
I made the
Motion by
motion.
Brandy, second by
Second.
Eric. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, I think we have it there.
Beautiful.
Right, well, thanks, everybody, appreciate it, we'll see you Thursday night.
6 PM.
Right.
It's a date, wear a dress.
Motion to fix the time to which to adjourn to. That's what it is.
Oh, my.
You could motion to adjourn, or you could motion to fix the time to which to adjourn to.
Yeah,
Cheat
we,
sheet for Robert's rules.
Gotcha. I need to download that. That's a mouthful of a
yeah,
motion.
I think we got to go ahead and, we've adjourned,
Are we adjourned?
Yes.
Aye.
yep, we're good.
Fantastic. All right, and we'll see you guys at 6. 2 days hence.